The AK47 or the KRIG-6? That is the question this video is going to answer. We're going to cover the overall stats for both guns, comparing them to let you know which one is the best. If you enjoy these videos of us breaking down the game and weapon comparisons, subscribe to the channel as we've got a lot more coming out during the Cold War integration. And on top of that, we want to hit our goal of 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so if you can help us achieve that, that'll be great. Both of these guns are very popular full auto assault rifles inside the Cold War multiplayer. A lot of people enjoy using both guns for different reasons, and this video is going to cover exactly why you should be using each of these guns. As always, the first thing we need to show you is the class setup that we use to compare both of the guns. For the KRIG, I use the Millstop Reflex. This is my personal favourite close quarters optic. For the barrel, we use the takedown barrel. Now, the options aren't the best for the KRIG, so I wanted to extend that damage range out as far as possible. It's just quite unfortunate it doesn't also extend out the bullet velocity as well. Even though this gun has little recoil, you want to control it as much as you possibly can, and there's no better attachment than the Field Agent grip. Then we use the jungle style mags. You could also use the 40 round mags or any other magazine attachment you prefer. And then lastly, we use the speed tape just to get that faster aim down sight time. You could use the airborne elastic wrap as well. But personally, I feel like the speed tape is just enough. For the AK47 whip for a similar build, again we use the Millstop Reflex, my favourite optic. Then I chose to use the Muzzle Brake. Now this is something you can swap out for speed tape, an airborne elastic wrap, or any other attachment you prefer. I just like using the Muzzle Brake because it helps with recoil control. But a must is the VDV reinforced barrel. This extends out your initial damage range as well as extend your bullet velocity, which is very important with the AK. Then you need to use the Spetsnaz grip to control that recoil as much as possible, and at the very end of this video you'll see exactly how much this controls the recoil. Lastly, we use the taped mags. You can also use the 40 round mags as well, but we do have a gun guide video on the AK showing you exactly how each attachment affects the reload times. That will be linked at the end of this video. As you can see, we built both of these guns very similarly, and that's because you play very similar with both of these guns. You're going to be using both of these guns in those medium range gunfights where you do need that faster bullet velocity, and extending that damage range is definitely going to help. One thing I don't like about the KRIG is that there isn't any barrels that do extend damage range as well as bullet velocity. I feel like this would be very useful. Every other assault rifle has this option besides the KRIG for some reason. And it's not like the base bullet velocity for this gun is already amazing, it's just pretty average, which you'll see right now with the stats. With the stats on screen, grey is some key areas that I would like to highlight, blue is with the attachments added from earlier on in the video, and white is the base weapon. Starting from the bottom this time, I do want to discuss this whole bullet velocity thing. So the KRIG-6 has a base bullet velocity of 625 meters per second. The bullet velocity on the AK is definitely worse at 490 meters per second, but then we see the benefit of that reinforced barrel extending the bullet velocity out to 686 meters per second, which now beats the KRIG-6. Going back to damage now, we can see the AK takes one less shot to kill to the head, as well as to the body, than the KRIG-6. The rate of fire with the AK is 600 rounds per minute, whereas the rate of fire with the KRIG is 652 rounds per minute, and that means the time to kill for the AK is slightly quicker by 68 milliseconds. We should all know by now that the AK at close range is the fastest killing AR in the game. In terms of damage ranges, especially with the attachments added, the KRIG definitely beats the AK47, but keep in mind this barrel is only affecting the damage range, whereas for the AK47, the barrel affects the bullet velocity as well. Both the ADS speed with the base gun as well as with the attachments added are quicker on the AK47, and also the reload times with the attachments and without the attachments are quicker on the AK47. So the AK seems to be a great option overall. It kills quicker, it aims down sights quicker, and also it reloads quicker too. The only benefit that you get for the KRIG is that extended damage range, but in my opinion, with multiplayer and 6v6, you're not really going to be fighting enemies past 100 meters anyway, especially with an assault rifle. You would much rather take that boost to bullet velocity just to make sure that your shots are connecting. Another important thing to mention is that overall movement with both of these guns is very similar. You're not going to be finding yourself moving quicker with a KRIG, for example, than the AK. They both have similar movement speeds. So overall, it looks like the AK is the clear option here. You're getting a good balance in damage range, but everything else is definitely much better than the KRIG. But that's all fine and well as long as you're hitting your shots. So what does the recoil charts look like for both of these guns? On the screen now, you'll see the recoil chart. On the left is no attachments. On the right is with the recommended attachments added from earlier on in the video. And what we can see on the left is that the recoil for the KRIG is definitely much easier to manage than the AK47. The AK has a lot of horizontal recoil compared to the KRIG, and this is talking about the base weapon. Now when you take a look at both of the guns with the attachments added, the difference in the recoil patterns is not so significant anymore, and you'll find yourself hitting shots very easily with both of these guns, even at really long distances. As you can see, after you add on the attachments we recommended at the start of the video, it makes the AK47 very accurate. The KRIG also becomes very accurate, but there's less and less of a reason you should be using the KRIG over the AK here. There is something to be said about the KRIG. I do feel like I hit my shots a bit better with the KRIG for some reason. I don't know why it exactly is. That's just with my experience though. I feel like bullets just land more consistently with the KRIG than it does with the AK47. One thing I also want to point out very quickly is that the task force barrel for both of these guns does not affect the time to kill in any way. On top of that, it significantly increases recoil, so I'd recommend staying away from it. The last thing we need to take a look into is the hipfire accuracy for both of these guns. You're not going to be hipfiring all that often, but on the off chance that you do need to hipfire an enemy at close range, how good are both of these guns? With the Hipfire chart you see on screen now, there's no attachments on the left, and then the attachments are on the right. The AK is in green and the KRIG is in blue. What we can see for the base guns is the Hipfire accuracy is not amazing, but you can definitely use it if you're in a panic. Personally, overall, I would have to give it to the KRIG. I feel like the KRIG is a bit more accurate in terms of hipfire compared to the AK, and that is with and without attachments in my opinion. And remember, none of these attachments we used actually help hipfire accuracy. If you do want to take a look at that, we do have a gun guide series on the channel. On there, we test all the lasers for each of the guns. With an AR, hipfire accuracy is not something you should base your full decision on, but it's definitely something you should consider. There's not a whole lot that separates both of these guns in terms of hipfire accuracy. I just personally think that the KRIG does slightly better than the AK, but there's not like one that is significantly better than the other here. It's just something you want to consider in case you cannot switch out to your secondary weapon. Maybe your secondary weapon is a sniper rifle, for example, and you don't want to switch out to that to hipfire. Or maybe you don't have enough time to switch out to your secondary weapon. You do want to consider the hipfire accuracy with both of these guns. Similar to when I compared the AK to the XM4, I'm going to have to give my decision back to the AK47. There is a reason why a lot of people use this gun, and that is because it kills fast, it reloads quick, and overall it's very accurate if you use the correct attachments. The KRIG is also a really good option in this game. It's by no means a bad gun. The FFAR1 is a bad gun. All jokes aside, if you're trying to decide on which of these guns to use, I would go with the AK47. If you enjoyed this video, leave us a like as it lets us know you like to see content like this. Also, if you're new to the channel, subscribe as we're going to be making a lot more weapon comparisons, especially when the Cold War integration takes place. We're going to be comparing the Modern Warfare guns to the Cold War guns and giving you the stats for both so you know which ones are the best. And thank you very much for watching.